So is that presentation for the people here or for the dead guys on the wall? I've never presented to an elephant head either, so this is going to be a little bit interesting. Thank you all for being here today, and thank you, John, and the X+1 team for inviting me. Just as a little bit of background, I'm the MD at a company called Winterberry Group. It is a management consulting company that specializes in advertising and marketing services. What's interesting about that? What's interesting is we work for marketers, we work for publishers, and we work for the supply chain. And as a subsidiary of an investment bank, we probably, in combination with our partners there, touch about 1,000 CEOs in this space in a given year. And it gives us a fairly unique lens into what is happening in marketing and advertising. And so we talk a little bit about marketing in transition. So what does that really mean? Well, we used to say the customer's in control. Remember that? That was really big like 2-3 years ago. A friend of mine, John Zell, over at Razorfish, did a study. And consumers said, we don't want to be in control. We don't even think we're in control. That's not interesting. Consumers now consume 30-35% of their media online. Consumers are very concerned about privacy. States are very concerned about tax. The buyers, the sellers are very concerned about tax issues. And the other thing, it seems like everything's about social and mobile. You know, 5 years ago, it was not about social and mobile. 5 years ago, 6 years ago, there was virtually no social. So marketing's changing, and marketing's changing fast. And when we look at that, we look at the numbers. So let's start with traditional media. Traditional media represents about $112 billion of spend. Television, magazines, newspapers, all forecast to be down this year. That $112 billion, when we started tracking this 6 years ago, was $150 billion. And it wasn't the recession that made it go away. It was the transition in marketing. Where did the money go? Well, it looks like the money's going into direct and digital marketing. That this money that was over there has slowly moved, and it's moved into digital. And direct and digital is now $163 billion. And 5 years ago, it was $120 billion. So it's not just money that shifted from place to place. It's new money that's come in is also moving over. So the money's following the consumer. It's following a little bit slower, because if you think about it, digital marketing today, it's 10% of that $300 billion. It seems like it's the only thing that matters, and for those of us who work in the interactive space here, it is something that matters a lot. But it's still, from a marketer's perspective, it's 10%. It's not 100%. So, in addition to all this, we have data. So John started to talk about this, and I'm going to try to frame it up a little bit for you. So once upon a time, we started to create data, information, content, et cetera. 5 exabytes for the first couple of thousand years, 5+ exabytes every 2 days. But it gets better. We have petabytes, and we have zettabytes. A petabyte, being 1 million gig, is the equivalent of 75 billion iPads. A century's worth of tweeting, which is an amazing concept. And then they had to come up with yet another letter, so we have zettabytes, which is equal to 1 million times the entire collection of every library. This is a lot of content. This is what they're calling big data. So if you hear a term today or elsewhere that's describing big data, this is the size of big data. It's massive. It's more data than was ever created. And how do you store all this stuff? And what do you do with all this stuff? And what is it? All right. So, well, part of it is the data that we talk about in our world. It's marketing data. It's geodemographic data. It's psychographic data. It's transactional data. It's social data. It's browser data. It's mobile data. And it's coming from all over the place. It's the traditional stuff, and it's the new stuff. But when you think about data, it's not just that. It's more than that. It's all the web content that's being created, all those sites, all those pages, all those video streams. So it's not just marketing data, which kind of does fit in a normal-sized database of maybe a petabyte or a couple of terabytes. And it's all the marketing content, and it's the marketing assets. Campaigns take two things, the data and the assets. It's all of these things together. And this is big data. And this big data that's streaming out to everybody has to be consumed. And there's a lot of dollars backing this. We all want a free internet. We don't want to pay for any of this. But what do? As a marketer, we've got data coming at us from everywhere. We have media proliferation, clutter, you name it. How do you cut through this? What is the process? What are the platforms? What are the people? Well, we think the answer is that you're going to need to define a path. And that path's got to be personalized, it's got to be real-time, and it's got to be integrated and interactive. So let me talk a little bit about that. I'm going to talk a little bit more about what the consumers would like. All right. Customers, they want what they want. They want it personalized. They want it relevant. They want it when they want it. They want it on any device, in any location, and they don't want you to be creepy. It's really easy. If you can do that, you win, and we can all go home. All right, so what do the marketers want? They want sales. Come on. We could say we want a relationship, we want to be liked, we want sales for our part. We want sales. And we need profitable sales. So I need optimized marketing costs. I also don't want to be castigated in the press. You know, we're good, we're nice people, we shouldn't get all this bad press. But this is what the marketer wants. Well, let me take it down another level. Okay. We have just finished a new white paper that'll be out next week on customer experience marketing. And during the course of that, we surveyed 100 or so marketers, phone, online, et cetera, and we asked them a bunch of questions. We said, what do you really want with your customer interactions? The white paper will be released next week at Epsilon's customer conference, because Epsilon is our sponsor on that one. So you will be able to get it, and it is available free. But it is about sales. I want more sales. I want to be able to cross-sell. I want to be able to ensure that I represent my brand and my product well. You know, does this mean real time? Does this mean online? It means everywhere. So I'll give you a really good brand experience example. So last night, I went to the Whiskey Live event at the Chelsea Piers. And I'm a single malt person. And we walked over to Lefroy, and we said, you know what, we were over at your distillery in Scotland back in November, and we had a great time. And he goes, are you friends of Lefroy? We said, we are. We have our own little piece of Lefroy, which you get by giving your email address. And he said, that's great. And he's got this Wellington boot. If everybody's ever seen the Wellies, they're like this high. He reaches in, pulls out a bottle. He goes, we just made this last summer. It's the Lefroy Cardew or whatever it's called, and I want you guys to try it. So we tried that. He goes, did you like that? It was fabulous. And he goes, look, I got another one for you. Reaches under the table into a box, pulls out a 30-year-old Lefroy that's about $500 a bottle, and starts pouring around. And we liked that too. It was really good. And you know what his title was? Brand Ambassador. And he did. He made me feel connected to that brand in ways that I cannot even explain. But that's about building that relationship with a customer. It's not easy. It's not easy, but it happens. So we want these experiences to deepen our customer relationships. It's the #1 thing that marketers are looking for in addition to sales. And if you have the right customer experience marketing platform, if you have the right acquisition platform, if you do the right approaches, you're going to get there. So let's start talking about the getting there part. So, solutions. I need marketing. It's personalized, it's cross-channel, it's integrated, and it's real-time. Those are 4 kind of interesting words to me, and they're just words. And it set me on a path that it said, all right, what is real-time marketing? Everybody uses it. How many people here are familiar with the term real-time marketing? Bunch of hands. Well, I thought I was familiar with the term too, so I went online and I said, let me look it up. Has anybody tried to look up the term real-time marketing on the web? It doesn't exist. Nowhere. There is no definition. There's no wiki. There's nothing that says this is real-time marketing. So I said, I'm going to have to make some stuff up real fast. So real-time marketing system, to me, is a system that can support the execution of marketing intent under time constraints. Time is the factor here for real-time. It's a hardware and software solution that takes people out of the equation. We don't operate in real time. We operate in store and forward. You give me something, I process it, and at some point I'm going to forward it on to the next person. Sorry about that. So you're going to have to take people out, and you're going to have to automate this. And it's got to interact to us across whatever device, whatever media, and it's got to do it really fast. It doesn't actually mean it has to be that fast, but it's got to be fast. So this should be really easy. I've got intent. I know what I want to do. I'm a marketer. I got my plan. John's got my data. Brad's storing my creative. Pull it all together, put it into the campaign execution bucket, shake it up, out it goes. I get conversions. I get up and cross-sell. It's that easy, right? Or if it was that easy, we wouldn't actually have to be here because we got rid of all the people. All right, so what's holding it back? Well, there's versioning. If you want to personalize, it means I've got to have lots of versions and lots of content. It's compliance. I've got to make sure that this is compliant to whatever rules, regulations, whether they're my internal rules, or they're the rules of the marketplace, or they're the laws of the land. I've got to make cross-channel execution work, but I live in a world full of silos. Well, that's not so easy. And then I got a fragmented supply chain. So we're all familiar with the Luma chart. We track nearly 8,000 suppliers in this industry, in our database. They all are involved in marketing and advertising. Some marketer somewhere sitting in procurement is going to say, I know exactly which one I'm going to pick. Or maybe these top 4 and I'll do an RFP. Out of 8,000. All of whom do something slightly different, unless you're an agency, in which case you do everything all the time. So it doesn't matter. But it's not easy. And those silos, this is what the world looks like upstream inside of a marketer's organization. It's not so easy. You've got people, they are in silos. I've got my email people, I've got my direct mail people, I've got my display people, I have my search people, I have my broadcast people. Do all these people talk to each other? Do they all even report to the same person? Frequently, they do not. Oh, these are brand. You know, that's different than the direct. Oh, wait, it's online? That's different from the performance people. They're all living in different places. Eventually, it all reports up and rolls up into a CMO. But it's not actually that easy. So we have an ecosystem on the marketer side that's very fragmented and dispersed, and on the supplier side. And then we throw in, okay, what does the marketer want? What does the publisher want to do? What do the suppliers want to do? And what does the customer want to do? And everybody's doing this tug of war. So all of these things make what should be simple really, really hard. And that's a bit of a challenge. So let's talk a little bit about, is it possible? Well, I actually do think it's possible because we're seeing this in individual channels right now. Whether it's a triggered email marketing event, you go online, you buy something, I get an email. I was buying my tickets for Whiskey Live the night before, and by the time I clicked away from the page, I had an email confirm in my inbox with my tickets for the event. I thought that was pretty cool. What was also pretty cool was because the site that I transacted on was over in the UK, I also got a call from my credit card company saying, are you sure that you want to do this transaction, or is this fraud? And all of that happened within 5 minutes. I thought that was really cool. So we are starting to see this. We see people going into a call center, they get information sent out via variable data printing. Variable data direct mail, I take my data, I take my content, and I have a decisioning engine in the middle. It says, you did this, And therefore, we're going to send you this personalized piece of mail. We do it in email. We do it offline. Location-based mobile and social. I walk into a store. I'm part of the Best Buy. Will I get a text message with an offer on my phone? I can. Some places are doing this already. So we're starting to see this real-time, single-channel real-time. Lots of single-channel real-time. But definitely preference-based, definitely personalized. We're starting to see better, more targeted display ads and not always the creepy ones. We're starting to see better recommendations, sometimes too many. I bought a bunch of stuff on Amazon, and all of a sudden now they just keep sending me recommendations. I bought a TV. I looked at a different TV, and all they do is send me TV offers, like once a day. It's like they need to stop. And they're one of the best. But this is all happening. It's being automated, so it's real. It's just really hard. So what do we think you need to do prescriptively? All right. Data. I'm going to start with data. So I have a data layer. I have data. It is living in places all over my organization. It is in marketing. It is in IT. It's in e-commerce. It's at my partners. It's at my suppliers. It's operations data. It's product data. And it's marketing data. So it's the content. It's the marketing assets, the creative assets, and it's all the marketing data. And I need to get this organized. John talked a little bit about a data management platform. In the online world, this has become kind of the term of 2011. Well, when I think about a data management platform, I think bigger than that. I think that that's too narrow a definition for me. I want all my data organized so I can use it online and I can use it offline. Now, this is probably a lot easier if you start with your customer data before you actually start looking at your prospect files. But I need to make this data actionable. And a data management platform, to me, is one that will make my marketing assets and my other data actionable, organized, unified. I'm not going to shut down all the databases all over the place, but I need to find a way to make it connected. And it's not hard because half the time we go in, people can't figure out where their data is. Oh, it's over in this, it's a publisher, and this publication's got a database, and this other publication has a database, and a third publication has a database, and I've got my loyalty database over here, and my prospect pool is out at another client, and how do I get all this to work together? So we think that the first step is going to be very much, I've got to integrate my data. But once it's integrated, it's great, it's there. I need a decisioning engine. Now, decisioning engines come in a lot of flavors. X+1 for site interaction. They're a decisioning engine. They've got a series of business rules that are really, really smart, based on a lot of hard work, that make decisions on what assets to pull, creative assets, and based on what data. We have DSPs. We have supply-side platforms. We have yield management platforms. We have lead scoring platforms. We have variable data platforms. We've got a ton of decisioning engines that are working in real time. The problem right now, they're not actually connected to each other. At some point, we're going to need the Uber decisioning engine, the decisioning engine that connects all of this data, all of these business rules, so that no matter where you are, it will say, I just saw Farrell at the call center. Farrell at the call center is now Farrell on the web, and I can actually jump across and continue to follow and stalk Farrell. I like to stalk Farrell. She's a friend. But we need to be able to get there. The good news is the technology is actually getting there. But decision engines have to be integrated, just like the data has to be integrated. And of course, then we have our marketing execution platforms. All right, so I can execute a display ad. I can execute on the site, bring up the right page with the right content. I can do an email campaign. I can do a direct mail campaign. Of course, all of these are separated. So it's great that I got my data in one place. It's great that I have my decision engine. Can I push this through all of those siloed execution channels? Well, in some cases, email, mobile, social platforms are starting to integrate. We're starting to see much more integration with search and display. So I think we're going to see a lot more of this. This is going to take time. It's going to be a couple of years. before we actually get there, but we're getting there. It's closer every year. And I've been watching marketing automation now for the last 15 years. And I started my career in telecommunications back when AT&T was being broken up, before it got put back together. So we've been watching this for a really long time. We are closer now than we have ever been before. But there are a lot of choices. We're going to have choices as marketers a couple of ways. So I have all this personalization, and I have great point solutions. And then I have vendors, such as IBM, who are building the next great marketing stack. And I have vendors such as HP, Oracle, SAP, etc., who are going, oh shit, IBM's doing that. We're going to do that. We're going to build an ad server. We're going to build whatever. We've got Adobe. So we're going to have big stacks. And the question is, are we going to live in a land that's good enough? So I'm going to have good enough technology in that stack. I might have some things that are absolutely best of breed, like Netezza, and then I might have other things. But it's difficult to make those choices that basically say, okay, stack, no stack, point solution. There's a lot of technology challenges out there. So when I think through what I need to do, I have to make some real choices. And it's an investigation. It's not going to happen overnight, but I have got to tie all these things together somehow. And the good news is there wasn't even something close to a stack 5 years ago. It wasn't on the radar. And the point solutions, frankly, they were okay. They weren't very good. But we are seeing so much progress in marketing technology with companies like X+1, with companies like Netezza, and the more we see, the better we get, the more options we have, and you have to make decisions of, should I do this myself? Should I outsource this? So there are a lot more decisions that need to be made. All right, so this is a journey. This is not a thing that I'm going to do overnight. This is something that's, I think, will take most marketers 3 to 5 years. So not something that, oh, it's done, I've got it. I think it's a long process. We're going to see a lot of evolution. We're going to see a lot of missteps. One of the things what we don't want to see is what we saw with Siebel in the late 90s. For every dollar of Siebel, you spent $5 on consultants, and maybe it worked. And mostly it didn't really work. And CMOs who are investing millions and millions of dollars on these 3 to 5 year implementations said, you know, this is going to cost me my job. And I only have a 24-month job anyway. So why the hell should I do this? So we can't make this a 5-year implementation process. There's got to be a whole series of things that you can do in a staged process. That's why it's a journey. Don't do it all at once. So what do we want to do? You got to find the data. Not everybody knows where their data is, but you got to go out and you got to find it. And you got to set up the processes so that you can start to pull it together. You got to do the same thing with the creatives. And look, I've worked with a lot of agencies and a lot of creative folks. They like to recreate stuff. As a matter of fact, they get paid to create stuff. And if I made this all organized and I made this all indexed, and I could actually pull components and assets together, and I could automate that, that's going to cause some serious dislocation in the creative supply chain. Plus, they don't get to do all that tweaking they love to do. And they don't get to get paid for that. So we've got to reconcile the needs of the marketer, the needs of the customer, and frankly, the needs of the supply chain. That and the customer is, and the marketers are just as much to blame. You know what? I don't like that green. Could you make it a little different? You know what? You get so much of that. But you got to find those assets. You got to get them in a marketing asset management platform. You got to get it fully indexed. You got to make it searchable. And you got to make it extractable. So there's got to be an input path and an extract path. I need all the processes that tie this together. And I've got to make this replicable. It can't be custom. The more custom it is, the more spaghetti you're going to wind up. I've done enough custom software, and I've run 2 software-related companies. You start customizing, it works really great, And you get like 3, 4, 5 years down the road, and you say, and now I want, and they look at you like, you're a joke. We can't do anything until we rewrite the whole platform. And you're like, you're kidding. So the more that we get away from customization and we get into replicable software, the better that we're going to be. It needs to be compliant as well. We have to make some decisions. What do we insource and what do we outsource? What should we as marketers do? And what should we give to our partners? How do we run a lean organization? I know one Fortune 100 company, they have in their marketing supply chain right now 15 people directing over $1 billion worth of spend, and it's not TV spend. 15 people. They have made a decision, they will outsource all of it. And those people are basically arbitrating between the intent that the brand wants and all the downstream execution. I've seen other organizations with thousands and thousands of people. You know, every organization has its own cultural. There's a whole series of cultural issues that are going to have to be addressed. Look, if I had 500 people working for me in marketing, and therefore I had X number of tiles in my office, because I'm a big cheese. Now all of a sudden you're coming and you're saying, we're going to just put a whole bunch of technology in, and you're only going to need 100 people. My office may get much smaller. I may lose some of that influence. What will this do to my career? That's a big issue. You go in and talk to these people. Yeah, it's all great for the company. What will this do to my career? What will this do to my people? How am I going to reallocate my headcount? It's a real issue. You are going against culture. You're going against organization inertia. And that's why this is, once again, why 3 to 5 years? Not because because I think the technology will be there far faster, but I think the people change is going to be very, very difficult, and it's going to make, it's going to require people who are willing to break the glass. And we find those heroes inside of a lot of companies. They exist. But they have to be a little fearless, and they have to say, it's not about me, it's actually about my organization. And that's a challenge. Not everybody's willing to step up and say, you know what, I got 5 years to retirement, screw this. So it's a bit of a challenge. I need to really build out a roadmap. So 5 years, okay, it's not I do this, and then 5 years later it's there. This is going to be a process. And it's going to take building a roadmap that spans time, that spans administrations in marketing, that spans growth and change in the supplier community. It's like, I just picked the supplier, now they're part of another company. The rate of growth in advertising and marketing supplier M&A is phenomenal right now, because obviously we track that. My partners have done 25 deals in the last 15 months, with 4 more coming down this month, compared to 16 deals last year. No, sorry, compared to 8 deals the year before. And at the very peak before the crash, I think we did 12 or 14. There's a phenomenal amount of consolidation. There has been about $1.5 billion of invested capital into just the digital side of this ecosystem. Capital that is creating change, creating growth, creating new technologies, new companies. So I've got a living, breathing supply chain that I've got to manage. So I've got to figure out my own people, I've got to figure out my supply chain, and I've got to get a process that works. So it's really about having a process that's flexible enough that it can adapt to changes in my supply chain, changes in my staff, changes in customer behavior, changes in direction and products. So it's not easy, but that's where you start. Start by thinking about what that process needs to look like. And then, don't forget, you're going to need a data governance plan. We spend a lot of time talking. I'm on the board of the DMA, and we're spending a lot of time talking about, if we've got data all over the place, how do you govern that? What are the rules of engagement as a marketer and as a supplier? Obviously, it's a very current topic. But even before that, I've got data in too many places. Nobody owns the data. I need somebody to kind of raise their hand, or an organization that says, I'm going to be responsible inside the marketing organization for the data, so that I can manage in a PII and non-PII environment. That position doesn't really exist right now. It needs to be created. that position doesn't have anybody to train them. Where do I go to find out what all the rules are? How do I keep up with Washington and what they're trying to do in privacy? How do I deal with the US laws? And then you go, we do a lot of work in Europe. It's every country's laws plus the EU laws. I got to know and understand all of that. So I'm going to have to create a couple of new positions. One of those positions will be a data governance officer. And one of those positions may, in fact, become kind of like the COO for marketing, whether you call it a VP of Marketing Operations or you call it the Chief Operations Officer of Marketing. I don't think marketing needs its own CTO, which was something that was being written about, but it may need its own COO to manage all of this process and all of this change, because it can't be the CMO. The CMO is worried about the brand. The CMO is worried about revenue side. The CMO is worried about what products do we need to bring, what reputation do we have. So they need somebody underneath them who's actually going to do this. And it was, the discipline, they call it marketing operations management. We've seen chief customer officers, chief customer experience officers. But I think what we may need, in fact, is a COO for marketing. And then we're going to have to make sure that we're continuously monitoring customer preference, media shifts, and just about everything else. And I think one of the greatest things that I've seen in the last 12 months, attribution platforms have gotten so much better. So we're beginning to understand better the actual understanding which 50% of my marketing spend is working. We're getting closer. We are absolutely getting closer every day, and it's because of a lot of work that's being done on the attribution side. And it's critical to tie these execution platforms to the attribution platforms. And we're starting to see that come together. So for me, this is a journey. This is a lot of really hard work. And it's going to require marketers and their suppliers to become partners. But at the end of the day, the suppliers are still the vendors. Marketers are still the marketers. But you are going to have to make bets. And you're going to have to make choices. And as a supplier, you're going to have to say, where do I fit in this picture? What are the things that I do well? Do I need to be part of a stack, or am I going to be a single entity? What type of services? How do I structure my organization? When you talk about desilozation, the agencies say, yeah, we've desiloed, or we're ready to desilo. We're waiting for the marketer. And the marketers are going, yeah, but it's too hard to work with them because they're all in silos. So there's going to have to be some commonality, and it's just going to take a bunch of time. That's my presentation today. Those are things that we're thinking about. These are the things that we think are going to be important over the next couple of years. But I really do believe that we are going to get to real-time marketing. And it's the technology people, it's the companies in this room, and it's going to be a tremendous amount of hard work from the marketer side. So thank you very much. Any questions?
We have a couple of spotters out here if anybody has any questions. Right here, Jess.
Thanks. Bruce, that was great. In the new world 5 years from now, in terms of winners and losers, how many companies do you think will be pure software and selling software as a service, which is different than what it was when Siebel first came out, versus that need for people in the service component to help execute campaign and also maybe provide creative input?
I think the strategists are going to be really important, and their job is going to get more complex because they have to think much broader. It's a lot easier to kind of think, all right, I've got my channel I'm worried about. So I think that the process of creating marketing intent is going to be the most critical, strategy, analytics, et cetera. On the downstream execution side, we will continuously take people out of the equation because we can automate, we can make it better. You still need a good QC process, but it will get better, and there'll be a lot more transparency in the process. When it comes to behind the firewall or SaaS, I think we're going to see a lot more SaaS. Different organizations have different organizational compliance, rules, fears, needs. But I think we're going to continuously see an increase in the percentage of software as a service as opposed to behind the firewall implementations, because it's faster and it's more flexible. So if I can make my connections, it's going to be about my web services and my APIs and how I connect this together. The better job that I do there, the more I'm going to be able to connect. And the more flexibility as a marketer I'm going to have, because I can say I can connect to you tomorrow, and you today, and you the week after. But it's having that integration layer, but we're getting there. There are a lot of people focused on it. So I think we do see more of a SaaS-type environment going forward. Does that help, or is that completely confusing crap?
If we go one step further, like in terms of the power of the marketer, sorry, I guess, how much of it is going to remain automated in SaaS versus what, how many people are involved in the upfront creation, ideation, campaign execution, and how do you see the economic value split between the SaaS people and the front-end people?
We haven't kind of drilled into that. My guess, it's a guess. I'm a forecaster, so I guess. How many new channels are we going to get between now and then? So that's the first question. Every time we create a new channel, we create a whole new ecosystem that needs to be served, new technologies, new roles for new people. I don't see call centers going away anytime soon that employ millions and millions of people. I think what we're doing is we're winnowing out the non-essential jobs, those handoffs from one platform to another where you've got somebody rekeying. So we're going to see a lot of that manual work go away. Graphics editing, et cetera, there'll still be editors, and you're still going to need creative people. I don't think that there's a change in the value, but in order to achieve speed, we have to eliminate a lot of what goes in, or those in-between steps. So I don't think you can kind of say, all right, I'm going to have 10,000 people doing this and 50,000 people doing that and this amount of money going into software. I would say the amount of money that you spend on marketing technology licenses will significantly increase. It is not going to go down. And the easiest way to say that, think about that big data problem. If I'm creating that much more data, I need to manage that much more data, which means I need bigger databases. I need new database tools. I need new ways to do this, to access it, et cetera. Stuff that I don't have today. So I'm going to spend more money. So I think a bigger share of the marketing budget will go towards IT and IT related. Okay?
Thanks. Bruce, I don't think anybody in this room would say they know what the world's going to look like in 5 years. So how do you build a 3 to 5 year plan in the face of that kind of uncertainty?
Make it up. What you do is you do spend a lot of time thinking about how would you personally want to be interacted with 3 to 5 years out. What do we think is possible? Look at some of the things that are evolving today. And I know that you look closely at what's evolving today. And then you have to make some guesses. You got to make some bets. I was with a client yesterday, and we were having a discussion about how to build out their product roadmap and their strategy. And we said, you know what, we need to be directionally correct, make sure that we take care of the 20% of the customers that generate 80% of our revenue, get as close as possible, and stay nimble. That's the best we can do, because you don't know definitively what it's going to look like. We didn't know 5 years ago about the social explosion. There was no Twitter. Facebook had 100 million people. LinkedIn had no people. What does this mean? So when I think 5 years from now, yes, it's social. Am I willing to place a bet that we're going to be talking to people wherever they are through some device? Now the question is it the device in my hand? Is it a phone? Is it a pad? Is it a notebook? Is it my TV? I'm speaking at the TV of Tomorrow conference in May to talk about addressable TV and what's coming. And as I've talked to people in that ecosystem, it's phenomenal. And guess what? Lots of data. And now I'm going to be able to target specific areas. I'm going to, and some people will even know, I know who's watching in that household based on the channels they're watching, et cetera, and I can send the right messages. And I can interact back through the TV. We know that's coming. It's more 2015 to 2020 stuff. So you kind of take some bets on what's incubating now and what historical adoption looks like, and we guess, because there's no other way of doing it. And we hope that directionally, we get it right.
Okay, maybe one more question we have time for. If not, thank you so much. Right here.
Hi. So if you've got this CMO who's losing all these people, or you have someone at an agency whose job is going to change significantly over the next, 2 to 3 years, if you're tasked with helping some of these new technologies or this new information take hold in your business or at your agency, where do you start to try to convince these folks that you still need them, but just in different ways? How do you kind of address that and really show them the value of the product, not just to their company, but also to them over the next couple of years?
I think it has to start with business outcomes. What are the business outcomes you will need to solve for, whether you're an agency or a marketer? And they have to understand, all right, how do we get there? So it's a little bit of directionally, we need to be here. What does best in class look like today? So finding statistics, there's tons of reports coming out of what is best in class and how does that impact performance and business outcomes. So you have to sell them on the vision of where you need to go and what the economic benefit is. Because if you don't start there, all the rest of it's shit. It's just never going to get there. So you need to start high enough, and then you kind of need to work process. Don't ever talk about how many people are going to be reallocated. It's a bad conversation. It will get you nowhere. Talk about these are the processes that need to happen to make us better and make us best. And these are the investments that will need to be made. And then talk about the people. So you really need to talk about the outcomes of change and the impact on the business first. Okay. Well, thank you very much. It's been a pleasure.